Have you ever felt that something's not right, even when everything on paper looks perfect? A fleeting sense, and only later you realized you were right. Tonight, before closing out a long day, I invite you to step into the journey of exploring the sixth sense, intuition, and the brain regions behind a gut feeling. Well, take a closer look at how an experienced brain quietly gathers signals, memories, heartbeats, to send you subtle messages that science is gradually decoding so you can understand yourself more clearly. Lie down comfortably, soften your gaze, listen to the story, and if these moments bring you a sense of peace, please hit subscribe to the Smart Sleep channel so we can walk together every night. Dear friend, tonight, before you close your eyes, let's gently touch something you've likely experienced many times throughout your life, but have rarely sat down to call by its proper name. That feeling of knowing without understanding why you know. That slight inner tremor that says something's not right, or this person is trustworthy, even before reason can produce a tidy list of reasons. People often call it the sixth sense, which sounds like a mysterious gift. A hunch, half spiritual, half hazy. But tonight, I'd like to invite you to look at it with a different gaze, gentler and more respectful, because very possibly that sixth sense is not some distant magic at all, but the wisdom accumulated through decades of living, working, loving, stumbling, and getting back up, whispering to you in a very delicate language. Imagine a whole day passing by, even when you're not trying. Your brain quietly does the work of a great observer. It records how someone averts their eyes when they lie, the tiny delay in an answer when they're hiding something, the very slight change in tone when someone is tense, the way a hand tightens without thinking, the way the corner of a mouth lifts that doesn't match the eyes. It remembers the previous times people of that sort brought certain outcomes. It compares, cross-checks, stacks, recurring patterns. All these calculations happen in silence, much faster than language and logic. Then, when a new detail shows up, a familiar forced smile, a mismatch between words and bearing your brain flips on a light. Watch out. You can't immediately retell every reason, but you see a hunch. And no, that isn't some spirit moving in. It's the result of the thousands of hours of life you've already lived. At 45, 60, 75, 85, you possess something no 20-year-old, however clever, can borrow. The data of time. Every time you trusted the wrong person, saw the wrong thing, chose poorly, witnessed how someone treated those weaker than themselves, saw pretty words mask an ugly nature. None of that vanished. It's stored in memory drawers that your conscious mind can't read every day, but your unconscious brain still accesses and keeps learning from. That's why when you sit across from a stranger, or stand before a financial decision, or hear a too-good-to-be-true offer, sometimes within a heartbeat you already have the answer inside. Something's off. Months later, when the truth comes out, you sigh. I wish I'd listened to my gut. Tonight, I want to murmur to you. That quiet voice deserves more of your respect. Not blind, absolute trust. But neither should you dismiss it as nonsense. Neuroscience has helped us see more clearly that the brain has two speeds. One part processes slowly, logically, listing and comparing. Another part processes quickly, automatically, reading familiar patterns in an instant. Intuition is a product of that fast system, but its quality depends very much on lived experience. And this is where your age isn't a disadvantage, but an asset. The more years you've spent observing people, working, raising children, caring for a partner, weathering illness, separation, the richer your subtle recognition systems become. When young, we're often cocky, thinking we know so much. But in the years after 45, 50, 60, your intuition about people, situations, what to avoid and what to keep, is often deeper and more accurate if you'll sit still and listen. Try to recall the times you knew beforehand without naming it. The day you walked into a clinic and knew you needed to ask one more careful question. The time you passed your grandchild's house and a curtain left slightly open. An unusual light made you stop and you discovered they needed help. The time your child said, "I'm fine," but the forced rhythm of their smile made you choose to stay a bit longer. That's your seasoned brain doing the best thing it can do. Protecting, connecting, caring. No need to mystify it. Just admit that you carry inside you an early warning system built from a whole lifetime. And yet often we turn our backs on it. We're taught, don't be suspicious. Don't be oversensitive. Do you have proof? Don't make a fuss. Especially for the experienced. Society can be unfair. Either it downplays their warnings or smirks. They're old and fussy, and perhaps you yourself, to keep the peace or avoid being seen as bothersome, have silenced your own voice many times. Tonight, as you lie down, consider this. Were there times in your life when, had you trusted your hunch, things would have been gentler? Not to blame yourself, but to recognize that this sixth sense isn't something to throw away. To be fair, we also need to face a subtle truth. Not every hunch is right. Sometimes, what you take for intuition is the echo of old wounds, of fear, of abandonment, betrayal, insult that never quite healed. If someone hurt you long ago, your brain stores that pattern deep. Later, all it takes is meeting someone with a similar note. Their way of speaking, their gait, their gaze for the alarm bell to ring. Even if this new person may be entirely kind, if life has dealt you a few financial shocks, sincere invitations afterwards may be blanketed in suspicion. In such cases, the hunch may be more a defensive habit than clear wisdom. The subtle lesson is to recognize it. An emotionally mature person is not someone who always trusts or always rejects intuition, but someone willing to sit down and ask one question before acting. Is this feeling coming from true experience, or from an old fear that hasn't been soothed? If you feel something's off with someone who's cornering you, ignoring your boundaries, belittling your kindness, that intuition deserves trust, because it protects your dignity and your safe space. But if you feel uneasy simply because someone loves you too sincerely and respectfully, while your past tied love to hurt, then perhaps this is the time to say to yourself, this feeling belongs to a bygone time, not to the person standing before me. When you begin to dialogue with your hunches in this way, you're no longer a victim of vague emotions. You become your own wise companion. The beautiful thing is that intuition can be both sharpened and softened at the same time. Especially in the years when life slows down, the children are grown, work is less frantic, and each evening becomes a chance to look back. Before sleep, you might try a tiny practice. Recall one decision from the day when you followed or ignored a hunch. Ask gently, what did I see? What did I hear? What did I feel then? No scolding, just name the cues. The look, the smile, the tone, the sensation in your chest. Do this often enough, and your brain will gradually distinguish more clearly between intuition based on truthful observation and the noise of anxiety. After a few weeks, you may find yourself calmer, less panicked, yet more alert to important warnings. That's how you turn the sixth sense into a reliable companion rather than a puzzling shadow. And when you think about age, allow yourself a small, proud smile. Being 45, 60, 80 doesn't take away your ability to sense. On the contrary, it gives you a depth younger generations often lack. Your intuition, tuned by honesty with yourself and a bit of understanding of how the brain works, can be a gift to the whole family. A gentle nudge for the young when they're too quick to trust. A subtle reading of who truly cares and who is only seeking gain. But don't forget, the gift is first for you. Finally, before sleep finds you, I invite you to hold on to one soft thought. The sixth sense isn't a mystery to fear. It's a tender summary of all you've lived. Each quality hunch is a short letter your own life writes to you in the invisible ink of experience. Tomorrow, when you face a choice, meet a new face, hear an offer or a remark that makes you hesitate, give yourself one slower breath. Ask, is this small voice protecting me or repeating an old wound? With just that question, you've stepped further into the light of inner maturity. And who knows, over the coming years, by understanding more about the brain regions behind a gut feeling, you'll choose warmer relationships, safer decisions, more peaceful evenings, so that each night, when you lie down to a gentle story like this, you can smile and say to yourself, I'm trusting the right inner voice a little more than yesterday. Then gently close your eyes. And then, if intuition is the gentle voice of experience, what stands on the front line, blinking a warning before you can even form words? Have you ever stepped into a room no one has spoken yet, and your body has already whispered, be careful? In the dim quiet of the room where you lie, imagine inside your skull a tireless lightkeeper called the amygdala. It's small, but over all these years it's the one that first made your hair stand on end when a car braked hard, when a stranger stood too close, when a seemingly harmless remark carried a threatening edge. The amygdala doesn't need you to write a list of reasons. It reads heart rate, reads eyes, reads sudden increases in volume, reads patterns our ancestors survived by recognizing. It isn't polite. It doesn't mince words. It doesn't analyze at length. It just yanks the cord. Danger. And that bell usually rings long before the sentence, I think there's a problem. Beside the amygdala works a quieter region called the anterior cingulate. If the amygdala is the guard, the cingulate is the coordinator in the control room, specialized in detecting conflict, sensing the mismatch between what we expect and what's actually happening. When someone smiles but their voice is cold, when a promise sounds lovely but the attitude is careless, the cingulate frowns. It sends an ineffable feeling. This doesn't line up, and you call it something feels off. All of this happens within fractions of a second. At your age, the mechanism has been honed by decades of experience, so sometimes it's even sharper than in the impulsive years of youth. But precisely because of that speed, many people mistake intuition for something mystical. In truth, neuroscience tells us, before you can find words, the emotional brain and the brain's conflict detection systems have already done their work. Recall an evening years ago. You were about to ride with someone you didn't quite trust. There was no clear proof. Everything looked fine. Yet your heart sank, your hands cooled. There was something in the air around them that made you draw in. If you made an excuse and declined, maybe later you realized you'd sidestepped trouble. That wasn't superstition. That was your amygdala and cingulate wiring up to past experiences in storage and sending you an urgent alert file. However, those same systems can rattle our lives if their signals are over-amplified by stress, insomnia, loneliness, illness, or unattended painful memories. When body and mind are in a constantly taut state, the amygdala becomes a sleepless guard. The slightest noise, and it draws its weapon. The cingulate, instead of discerning carefully between a healthy difference and real threat, rings the bell at every displeasing thing. Then something feels off shows up, even when nothing is dangerous. You may have had such a phase. Your heart pounds if your child is a few minutes late. A ringing phone stiffens your body. Everyone on the street seems suspect. Seeing a doctor triggers fear of bad news even before testing. In moments like these, if you call every discomfort accurate intuition, you inadvertently canonize your fear. You withdraw, decline good opportunities, doubt those who are genuine, and live in a world where every signal means risk. So our lesson tonight is not always obey the amygdala, but learn its language. The amygdala and cingulate are the fire alarm, not the Supreme Court. Their job is to blow the whistle early, but the power to review the tape, check the facts, and render judgment still belongs to your rational brain and your steady heart. How do we distinguish wise alarm from needless worry? First, look at context. When the off feeling appears, are you exhausted, sleep deprived, fresh from an argument, or have you just binged on negative news? If so, give that feeling a temporary label. Could be stress. Take a few slow breaths. Let your body settle, then review the situation. Many times, after a minute or two, the scene isn't as threatening as it first seemed. Second, watch for consistency. A healthy hunch tends to recur whenever you face the same person or situation type, and each time it's accompanied by concrete cues. The way they dodge questions, the disrespect for your boundaries, the glance that slides away when discussing something important. A baseless worry is diffuse. Today you fear this person, tomorrow someone else, with no clear signs, just a cloud of tension over everything. Third, ask yourself a very gentle question. Is this feeling protecting me from something specific? Or is it repeating an old memory that hasn't been comforted? For you at your stage of life, this question is especially important. The longer we live, the more memories we carry, and some are dark. Sometimes the amygdala sounds the bell not because the present is dangerous, but because the past is still imprinted. When you realize that, you've done something courageous. You've separated the voice of the present from the echo of yesterday. Picture a woman in her 70s who once lost a large sum to a business partner in midlife. Years later, her grandson invites her to contribute a small amount to a transparent charitable project, purely to connect and give thanks as a family. Her amygdala hears contribute money, hears project, and flips the red light. She feels off, even though the grandson is someone she loves who has proven responsibility for years. If she listens only to the alarm and never dialogues, she might refuse, sadden the child, and miss the joy of joining in. But if she asks quietly, where is this feeling coming from? From the grandson before me, or from the man back then? She may realize the trembling in her hand belongs to a memory. Then reason and affection can step in, hold the over-alert guard, and say, thanks for protecting us. This time, well, check carefully and then decide, rather than run. In tonight's quiet room, you likely have a few such stories yourself. An invitation, a phone call, a relationship you once avoided because it felt wrong, and later you knew you were right. And perhaps an opportunity you shrank from in fear, and years later, a small regret. No one lives without both kinds of memories. The peace of later years doesn't come from erasing alarms, but from fine-tuning them, keeping the sensitivity that keeps you safe, easing the panic that makes you shrink. Neuroscience isn't here to steal the beauty of intuition. It's here to explain, to let you know you're not crazy, not irrationally suspicious, not weak when your body trembles at risk. It tells you the amygdala and cingulate are natural parts of the brain, designed to cherish life, to help you survive long enough to build, to love, to watch grandchildren grow. Knowing this, you can speak to your fear in a different tone, not scolding, not surrendering, thanking it and guiding it. Before sleep, try a tiny ritual, like testing the fire alarm in your heart. Recall one moment today when you felt off. Don't rush to judge yourself right or wrong. Just ask, what specific cues was that signal based on? Eyes, words, context, or mostly on my own fatigue and stress? Practiced gently each night, this is how you train the amygdala and cingulate to better tell wolves from wind on the roof. Over time, you may notice a subtle, deep shift. You no longer panic when a strange feeling arrives. You're calmer. You listen to your hunch like you would to a friend. Ask a few more questions, then decide. When real danger appears, you'll be alert and decisive. When it's only baseless anxiety, you'll know how to cradle it to sleep beside you instead of letting it steer the whole ship. That is the quiet self-development gift your brain's risk-watching regions can offer you in later adulthood. Learning to live between two banks, not naively surrendering, not rigidly shut. Trust that you have the right to heed something's not right, and also trust that you can verify, dialogue, and choose the kindest answer for yourself and those you love. As you close your eyes tonight, let a small question rest in your mind. Tomorrow, if the inner alarm rings again, will I fear it like before, or will I smile? Breathe deep and say, thanks for the heads up. Now let's look closely together and choose more wisely. With just that, night by night, you are quietly retraining your brain to protect without imprisoning, to warn without extinguishing your trust in the world. And that is one of the loveliest forms of courage in mature years. Each time you choose this, each calm decision amid alarms, you rewrite your life story. From someone who lives only to defend, to someone wise enough to tell real danger. From a gentle reminder to live more deeply. So, if the amygdala and cingulate are the first alarm bells, who stands closest to your body, listening to every beat, every breath, every slightest tightening in your belly, and sends that signal upward? What makes a small shiver at the nape of your neck become an important message? In the quiet dark of your room, let your imagination step slowly inside the brain. Deep within is a small region called the insula, not as noisy or famous as the prefrontal cortex, but playing an uncannily intimate role. It's your body's faithful interpreter. Every slight quickening of your heartbeat, every shallower breath, every heaviness in your stomach, a cool current down your spine, all of it is registered by the insula, organized and delivered to your conscious mind as subtle packets of information. When you say, I suddenly felt a knot in my stomach, I suddenly got the creeps, I suddenly felt warmed, that isn't sudden in the sense of causeless. That's the insula just having done its job. We call this function interoception, the ability to sense signals from inside yourself. Not everyone is equally strong at it. Some people hear the body clearly. They know when their heart starts to race from tension, when shoulders ache from carrying too much, when the stomach gets grainy from worry. Others go decades barely noticing. only realizing when the body shouts through real pain. Interestingly, research shows that those who are attuned to internal signals when used properly often have more accurate intuition in many decisions, not because fate favors them, but because they have an extra deep information channel. The body. Recall the times in your life when your body spoke before you found reasons. The day you stepped into an office building for an interview, no one had said a word. Yet your chest tightened. Your breathing accelerated in a different way. The time you met a doctor and, just from how he asked questions, how he touched lightly, how he explained, your heart calmed and your shoulders dropped. Or the time you stood before a restaurant. There was no warning sign, but your belly pinched a bit. Something about the air felt odd, and you turned away. In those moments, the insula was reading all the small signals. Smells in the air, the light, sound, spacing, faint facial expressions, then matching them with your body's state. It doesn't say, "The risk of infection here is 12%. It simply pushes up a feeling. This doesn't feel safe. Intuition, then, is the condensed translation of what the body senses. At 45, 60, 80, your body has been with you through so many seasons: work, stress, childbirth, loss, illness, recovery. It has learned how to respond to what's safe and what once caused pain. The insula, like a living diary of the body, stores patterns. This way of speaking tends to make me feel secure. That kind of gaze went with long, weary months. This cramped, airless room brings back a hospital ward. So when similar elements appear, the body calls back, and you hear it as intuition. But just like the amygdala, the insula isn't always right. If your body is in a long-drawn, taut state, sleep-deprived, in chronic pain, anxious, lonely, this system easily becomes hyperreactive. A heart that speeds a bit from coffee is misread as danger. A stomach that growls from hunger is labeled a bad omen. An unanswered text brings a squeeze in the chest, and you read it as a sign of coming loss. Not always. Sometimes it's simply a tired body searching for a story to pin its tension on. So the important point isn't whether you have the feeling, but whether you understand where it comes from. And this is where the idea that intuition is a trainable skill becomes gentle and full of hope, especially for you, who have already traveled a long stretch of life. You can't go back to being 20, but you absolutely can, starting on nights like this. Relearn how to listen to your body more kindly. Each night before sleep, instead of tumbling into noisy news, you can give just 1 minute to ask softly, "Today, what is my body saying to me?" Not poking for illness, but listening. Is my heartbeat fast or slow? Is my breath shallow or deep? Is my belly warm or cool? Are my shoulders relaxed or clenched? Just name it, no judgment. When you can name it, the insula receives a new message. The owner is paying calm attention. Neurologically, that changes how the system behaves. Instead of having to shout through pain, aches, or panic, it can speak softly because it knows you'll listen. Gradually, you'll tell apart real warning feelings. Your heart behaves differently when you stand near someone who always drains you. A chill in your gut each time you enter a toxic environment from feelings that are merely the echo of temporary fatigue. Today, you lacked sleep, so everything seems more threatening. A very everyday example. Imagine a man in his 60s, living in a quiet suburb, invited to invest in a low-risk, high-return project. The introducer speaks smoothly, papers look complete, grandchildren say it's modern, you should join. But that afternoon, reading the contract, he notices his hands run a little cold. his heartbeat irregular, a tightness in his stomach, not because he doesn't understand the text, but because something in the presentation and in the memory of previous high-return, low-risk pitches is making the insula ring. If he's trained, he won't dismiss it with "I'm old and timid." He'll acknowledge, "My body is asking me to slow down." He'll take the contract to an independent advisor. And perhaps that very pause saves him a large loss. That's intuition, supported by listening to the body. Conversely, imagine a woman who has weathered many health disruptions, so her body is often tired. Her heart easily races. Every call, every plan change triggers tightness. Without understanding the insula's role, she might attach all these sensations to bad omens, unlucky hunches, living in a fog of chronic worry. But if each evening she sits a moment, hand light on her chest, and recognizes, "My heart is fast because I had too much coffee, because I moved too little, because I'm worried for my child and haven't said it," then the signal goes back to its true source. Her intuition about the outer world is no longer wholly distorted by the storm inside. Learning to listen to your body, therefore, is not about learning to be more afraid. It is about learning to sort things out. When the insula sends a signal, you ask, "Is this a reaction to what's happening out there, or a reflection of my own state right now?" That seemingly simple question is in fact a profound step toward maturity. It helps you avoid projecting all your exhaustion onto others. Avoid turning every muscle spasm into a dark prophecy, but also avoid ignoring the times when your body truly is trying to save you from something. The beautiful thing is, this skill can be trained at any age. Your brain, whether at 50 or 80, still retains some capacity to change. Each night, when you give yourself 1 minute to listen without judgment, you are quietly retraining the lines between the insula and your conscious mind. You are teaching them, we are no longer living in permanent alarm mode. We can tell things apart. We can slow down. We can respect the body's voice without being dragged away by it. And when you can do that, your intuition suddenly becomes clearer, like a stream grown less muddy. The baseless tightenings in your gut grow fewer. The times when something feels wrong with clear reasons become easier to recognize. You become someone who doesn't only hear the voice in your head, but also the whisper beneath your skin, in your chest, in your breath, and uses all those channels to choose a path with fewer regrets. Before we close this section, I'd like to invite you to try a very small exercise tonight. Right there on the bed where you're lying, gently close your eyes. Place one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Inhale very slowly, counting to 4 in your mind. Exhale a bit longer, counting to 6. Repeat a few times. Within this slow rhythm, ask yourself, if my body could say one sentence to me tonight, what would it say? The answer may be very simple. Please go to sleep a little earlier. Please stop tensing up when it's not necessary. Please don't ignore this pain without seeing a doctor. Or, thank you for taking good care of me today. When you practice listening this way, intuition is no longer a suspicious shadow, but becomes a gentle dialogue between you and yourself. You no longer have to wait for some grand revelation to fall from the sky, because every day, every night, you are gathering small hints, small adjustments, keeping yourself on a safer, kinder trajectory. And perhaps the lesson worth carrying with you after tonight's story ends is this. On the journey of growing up, we don't only learn to listen to the world, to others, we also learn to listen to our own body as an old friend. Accurate, deep, compassionate intuition is not a secret gift reserved for a chosen few. It is the result of those who are willing to pause long enough to listen. If tomorrow, in the middle of a choice, you suddenly feel a warm, peaceful current running through your chest, or a slight tightening that nudges you to slow down, remember the insula, the quiet messenger, and ask yourself, with all the gentleness you deserve, is this whisper helping me live more kindly with myself, or asking me to heal something still unfinished? Within that question already lies part of the answer you seek. Then, gently, let that question drift along with your sleep. If the insula is the interpreter of the body's whispers, there is another character silently standing behind your every hunch, the storehouse of memories you think you've forgotten. What happens when the present brushes lightly against an old pattern, and your brain instantly whispers, "Watch out, dear friend," as you lie still, under the soft light, the room quiet after a long day? Let us step into a very special area of the brain, what science calls the systems of implicit memory, non-declarative memory. This is not the memory of capital cities, email passwords, or your grandchildren's birthdays. This is the layer of memory of the times you saw a deceitful glance, heard a sycophantic tone, felt an awkward handshake, endured a promise not kept, lived in a room heavy with unspoken tension. Those things you never sat down to memorize. You don't need to recount clearly, yet the brain still records them. As if, through many decades, there has been a diligent librarian in the wings, silently shelving each fragment in its proper place. In your life, there have likely been millions of moments that seem trivial. A time you saw someone avert their eyes when talking about money. A time you saw a child look away to hide sadness. A time you heard a chair scraped harder than usual, signaling anger about to erupt. A time you entered a restaurant with a strange smell, and the next day had stomach trouble. You didn't write down, "If the oil smells like this, don't eat there." But the next time a similar smell of old oil appears, your feet stop on their own. That is intuition, but more deeply, that is implicit memory being called up. Scientifically, our brain doesn't only store clear stories, it stores patterns, combinations of scenes, sounds, emotions, and outcomes. The hippocampus, basal ganglia, sensory cortices, all work together to build an invisible map of when this happens. It usually comes with that feeling. When the present resembles some corner of that map, the brain matches it very quickly and sends you a feeling: comfortable, safe, or uneasy, on guard. You don't need to remember in detail where it was, what that person's name was. Just the sense of, "I've seen this before," is enough. This databank is so rich that younger people can't imagine it. You've seen a few economic cycles, a few political seasons, a few types of people come and go. You've seen what overly perfect advertising often leads to. Seen a certain kind of sweet talk usually hide calculation. Seen a certain kind of silence hold back exhaustion. So when a new situation appears, your intuition flicks on quickly, and that is entirely understandable. It doesn't fall from the sky, it walks out from your own living library. Imagine inside you a vast library, with shelves stretching across decades. Each shelf is a type of experience. Family, work, finances, health, friendship, loss, recovery. Many books you will never reread from the beginning. But whenever life presents a similar situation, the unconscious librarian will pull out a page or two, flip quickly, and whisper, "This type, last time, did not end well. Be careful," or "This kind of person once walked with you through a hard season. The feeling now is similar, warm, sincere. You can trust another step. Hearing this, you may feel relieved. So, my hunches have roots, have foundations. But here, too, we need another kind of calm. Not every book in that library was written fairly. Some pages were written when you were very young, very hurt, very afraid. Some memories were recorded in a dark night. A crisis, a cutting remark, and even now they lie there intact, ready to be summoned whenever a new image accidentally resembles the old. If we're not careful, intuition becomes not only wisdom, but also a loudspeaker for prejudice. You may have seen this in yourself or around you. Once deceived by a man in a neat suit, and later suspicious of anyone in a suit. Once hurt in a relationship with someone who always spoke sweetly, and then, whenever anyone speaks kindly, you think must be fake. Once had a tactless doctor, and next time just entering a hospital makes your heart race. Even if the person in front of you is a devoted physician, if we label all those reactions accurate intuition, it's not fair. They are unfiltered, implicit memories. So the mature step at 45, 60, 80 is not to discard hunches, but to learn to reread your own library with gentler, clearer eyes. Whenever intuition flares up, we don't rush to label it definitely right or definitely nonsense. Instead, we quietly ask, what pattern I've seen before is this feeling based on? Does that pattern still fit the present? Let's take a gentle example. One afternoon, your son introduces his new life partner. Something about this person unsettles you. Their smile resembles someone who hurt you long ago, or their fast talking recalls someone you never trusted. Your intuition alarms. In that moment, if you blurt out, "I don't like them, something's wrong," you not only hurt your child, you might cast a ghost from the past onto a new person. But if you pause and ask, this off feeling, who does it resemble? What story? You may realize, they remind me of the one who betrayed me back then. Seeing this doesn't force you to dismiss your feeling, but it changes your response. Slow down, observe more, give this new person the chance to show who they really are, not who your memory fears. That's when your living library becomes wisdom, not a prison for others. Conversely, sometimes your hunch is based on a pattern truly worth trusting. After many years of reading people, you know that those who constantly dodge specific questions, talk a lot about profit and little about responsibility, rarely make solid long-term partners. Every time you meet that type, your implicit memory lights up. I've read this book, and it didn't end well. In such a case, trusting your intuition, asking for more time, refusing to sign in haste, is an act of honoring your own life. That's protecting the hard-won lessons you have paid for. The key lies in distinguishing the wisdom of experience from the shadows of bias. Wisdom comes from revisiting memory and drawing profound, compassionate principles. I've learned that people who don't respect boundaries are rarely safe. Bias comes from turning one or two experiences into a mold for everyone without checking. Wisdom helps us choose people and paths more accurately. Bias makes us shut our doors on good things. Fortunately, this discernment can also be trained with very gentle habits, especially suited to evenings like this, when the noisy part of the day is over. Before sleep, you can choose a recent situation where you had a strong hunch. Sit quietly, breathe slowly, and ask, what did that feeling make me do? Did that decision protect me or make me smaller? If the decision based on your hunch brought longer-term peace, fewer regrets, it was likely wisdom. If it left you ashamed, disappointed, feeling you were too harsh or missed something beautiful, perhaps it's time to adjust your memory filter. When you do this repeatedly, however softly, the brain begins to update. It gradually lightens the weight of outdated pages and gives more weight to pages holding newer lessons about kindness, healthy boundaries, trusting without naivety. The hidden library stops being a stage for old wounds and becomes a precious archive to help you live more deeply in the years ahead. There is another small gift here, realizing that age doesn't steal your freshness. It allows you to revise how you read your own life. You're not forced to keep telling the old story. I'm always fooled. I always choose wrong. You can, starting on quiet nights like this, write a different chapter. Because of the times I chose wrong, I now see the pattern, and in choosing differently, that is where implicit memory, instead of binding you, becomes a launchpad for freedom. Tonight, before letting sleep come closer, I invite you to revisit one strong intuition in your life that turned out to be right, and one intuition that led you astray. No need for blame or sugarcoating. Just gently notice on what pattern was the right one based, which memory shaped the wrong one. In that quiet observing, your inner library will gradually reorganize itself tidier, clearer, and perhaps the soft question to carry into sleep is this: with all the memories I hold, do I want to use them to prove the world is only dangerous, or to selectively keep the lessons that help me live more clearly, more humanely with myself and with others? The answer, unspoken, will show itself somewhere in how you listen to your hunches tomorrow. One beat slower, a little deeper, kinder even to those old chapters that once hurt you. Then, with steady breaths, let your mind and heart rest, knowing that inner library is being rearranged in a way that's gentler to your own life. If hidden memories are the quiet library feeding your hunches, there is another very important question that must be asked directly. Why is it that, as we grow older, many of us start doubting our own intuition, even though our brain at that time has more accumulated data than ever? Who planted in us the idea that old people guess wrong? Dear friend, perhaps for many years you've heard those half-joking, half-cutting lines. Old people are so fussy, so old-fashioned. You don't understand these times. We know better. Repeated often, such words can sink very deep, to the point where there are moments your hunch feels clear, but you brush it aside. I'm just being rigid. I'm overthinking. Tonight, in this quiet space, I'd like to invite you to gently undo those knots of prejudice, not to win an argument with anyone, but to restore the respect your own experience deserves. Neuroscience and psychology, when they seriously study how people make decisions, have found something interesting. In familiar domains, those with many years of experience often make quick, intuitive decisions that are quite accurate. This shows up in the seasoned doctor who looks at an X-ray and feels something is off before pinpointing it, in the skilled mechanic who hears the machine and knows there's a problem, in the veteran chef who tastes once and knows whether the dish is balanced. They aren't divining, they aren't getting lucky. Their brains, after thousands of exposures to images, sounds, smells, outcomes, have learned to recognize patterns without turning them into words. You are the same, whether you were a teacher, nurse, engineer, driver, factory worker, homemaker, business person, or someone who has lived through many roles. Your brain has built subtle maps of people, work, family, health. Your intuition in those familiar fields is not random mood. It is your lifetime working at high speed. When you meet a doctor who lets you finish a sentence, explains clearly, whose eyes are sincere. You're intuitive. I can trust this one is rarely baseless. When you enter a financial deal that sounds too perfect and your stomach tightens, your read it more carefully hunch is not invented. So why the feeling that old means guessing wrong? Partly because aging can come with other changes. Poorer health, detail memory not as sharp. A fast-changing world, new technologies, more sophisticated scams. These realities can tilt older adults toward two extremes, either losing confidence, assuming their feelings no longer matter, or clinging to every hunch as absolute truth, refusing to listen further. Both extremes distort intuition. A healthier way, and what we can practice together, is to treat intuition as an opening radar, not a final hammer. Radar's job is to quickly detect notable points on a wide screen, deciding what those points truly are. How risky or promising still needs more observation and thought. When a hunch speaks, instead of blocking your ears or delivering instant judgment, you can give yourself a slower beat. All right, I've got the signal. Now look closer. Let's walk through a few very real situations you may have lived or seen. A 70-year-old man is invited to sign an insurance contract highly beneficial for seniors. The salesperson speaks politely. The paperwork is dense with fine print, solemn colors. But as he sits there, he feels slight discomfort. A few phrases echo past experiences of being pressured. The smile doesn't match the eyes. His intuition says, something's off. If he dismisses it, old and paranoid, he may sign. If he absolutizes it, snaps. You're a scammer that's unnecessary. Instead, using intuition as radar, he chooses to ask more questions, take the documents home for family to review, or consult an independent party. If the contract is indeed unfavorable, the hunch saved him. If it's fine, the careful checking gives him peace of mind. In both cases, intuition and reason have worked together. Or a grandmother in a multi-generational home. One day, her granddaughter says, "I'm fine," but her eyes aren't like usual. Her laugh sounds forced. The grandmother's intuition, nourished by decades of reading people, whispers, "Something's wrong." If she ignores it, thinking kids these days are complicated, what do I know? The distance grows. If she barges in with harsh interrogation, the girl may shut down. But if she trusts that signal just enough to quietly pour another cup of tea, sit down, and say, "If anything feels heavy, you can tell Grandma too." She's using intuition as an open door, neither imposing nor abandoning. Many family relationships are saved in such sensitive minutes. Seen in this light, age ceases to be a burden. It becomes a data set which, if used with humility and kindness, can make your life and others safer and closer. The caution is not to let the label "I'm more experienced" turn wisdom into a wall. An older person with good intuition is someone who can say, "My feeling tells me this, but I'm still willing to listen more, see more, understand more." That sentence holds both experience and openness. You have every right to trust your sixth sense in the areas where you've lived, worked, loved, endured, and learned for many years. You also have the responsibility to question yourself when your hunch clashes with young people, new ideas you haven't yet understood. Sometimes that off feeling isn't because the thing is truly dangerous, but because it's not like before. Not my way. If you stop there, intuition is easily confused with fear of change. But if you ask, "Do I feel uneasy because a real value is under threat, or just because an old habit is being bumped?" you've taken a long step in refining your experience. Many studies on decision-making show that intuition works best when two conditions meet. The decision maker has rich experience in that field, and the environment is not distorted by overwhelming emotion or rigid prejudice. That means your experience is an asset. As long as you allow yourself to keep learning, keep asking questions. At 60, 70, 80, maintaining a learning spirit doesn't mean denying what you know. It means letting new data update old maps. When you do that, your intuition grows clearer, not duller. In the slower rhythm of post-middle age, you have an advantage you rarely had when young. Time to pause, to fully hear a hunch, then calmly verify it. You no longer must choose in 5 seconds amid a stormy meeting. You can, as you are now, lie in bed at night, rewind a situation from the day, ask how you reacted, where the feeling came from, and how you'd like to adjust next time. These gentle moments of self-reflection are the laboratory where intuition and reason learn to collaborate. Practically, you might try a 2-step whenever a hunch arises. Step 1. Acknowledge. Don't deny. I'm not at ease with this proposal. I naturally feel I can trust this person, just admit it. Step 2. Softly ask 3 questions. Is this hunch in a domain where I have a lot of experience? Is there any concrete sign supporting it? Is there any strong emotion? Fear of abandonment, fear of poverty, fear of growing weak that might be distorting it? You don't need to write it down, just let those 3 questions pass through your mind over a few breaths. Usually, the answers will help you know whether to follow it. Wait for more data, or ask someone else to help you see. This doesn't strip intuition of its naturalness. It makes intuition part of mature wisdom. Fast, but not rash. Deep, but not rigid. From there, something gentle happens. You begin treating yourself with the respect society sometimes forgets to give older people. You stop telling the story, I'm old, out of date, and shift to, I have experience. I will use it carefully and keep adjusting as needed. Before sleep wraps around you tonight, I'd like to leave you with one small prompt, so that next time a hunch appears, you might recall it. My experience is a light, not chains. A light must be placed correctly, to shine on the path, not into others' eyes. Your intuition, if you first shine it on yourself, to see whether fear or pride is leading, then shine it outward, becomes that kind of light. Warm, clear, not blinding anyone, and not letting you stumble. And if tomorrow, or someday soon, a young person brushes off your hunch with, oh, older folks always worry too much, you can smile inwardly. No need to argue. Just say to yourself, I know what I have seen in life. I'll listen to this feeling. Check it with reason, and choose what is kindest for both me and them. The most important answer isn't in the debate. It lies in the small, quiet, more precise decisions you make each day from the deep well of your own experience. Now, let your eyes close a bit more. The years you've lived don't lie behind you as a burden. They live within you as a treasure of data very few possess. Your intuition, when held in calm and clarity, is how that treasure continues to warm the road ahead. Rest with this feeling. You have never been too old to understand well, to choose well, to love well. You are simply continuing to learn how to use time's gift more gently. Then, breathe slower, and let tonight become one more thin layer settling over that gentle, seasoned wisdom. But if experience is a gift, there is another question that must be asked honestly. Could it be that what we call intuition is sometimes just old fear in disguise coming back? Could there be hunches that feel very sure, very strong, very "I just know it," and yet are wrong? Dear friend, to talk about this we need a space like tonight's, slow, quiet, without judgment. Because this is a sensitive corner. For many years, you've been praised or praised yourself for your accurate hunches, correctly sensing who was sincere, who was deceitful, when to leave, when to stay. But perhaps, somewhere in your memory, there are moments you recall with unease. Back then, I was absolutely certain I was right, but I ended up hurting someone, ruining something good, locking myself into a cramped, safe zone. Speaking of wrong, intuition is not to strip away your confidence, but to return to you a greater gift, a clearer sense of which voice truly deserves your trust, and which is simply the unhealed past speaking. Scientifically, our brain has a built-in tendency to prioritize negative information, the so-called negativity bias, simply because in evolution, remembering danger helped us survive. One burn from fire is recorded far more deeply than 10 pleasant warmings. One betrayal, one abandonment, one humiliation can etch into the nervous system like a streak of flame. In those who've endured major trauma, prolonged depression, chronic anxiety, profound loss, those streaks are even harder to fade. The amygdala grows more vigilant. The insula becomes more sensitive to bodily signals. Implicit memory systems quickly link vague cues to dark outcomes. Thus, just meeting someone, hearing a sentence, seeing a sign slightly different from your norm, that inner voice may already shout, "Can't be trusted, definitely a problem. It'll end just like last time." The subtle point here is this: that feeling is very real. It's not pretending. Your heart truly beats faster. Your stomach truly tightens. Your whole body truly feels uneasy. But very real does not always mean very accurate about the present. Sometimes it is very accurate about your past, but not about the person standing in front of you now, or the situation unfolding right here. In its effort to protect you, your brain unintentionally uses an old map to redraw a new landscape. Imagine someone whose life partner once betrayed them. Many years later, they enter a new relationship. Just one evening of no messages from this new person is enough for a wave of memory to surge up. Here we go again. The hunch screams. They're hiding something. The inner air grows heavy. Words turn sharp, controlling. But seen from the outside, the new partner may simply be watching the kids, working late, or exhausted. In such a case, what's being called intuition is not the voice of present wisdom, but the unhealed echo of an old wound. If this isn't recognized, that person can unconsciously push away someone decent, only to once again confirm to themselves that my intuition was right. Everyone leaves me in the end. A cruel loop directed by the past itself. Or think of someone who was badly scammed financially in midlife. Years later, every time someone mentions a new opportunity, partnership, investment, their body tenses, palms go cold, heart rate spikes, and the brain slaps on a label, danger. It's all a trap. Avoiding risk is wise. But if every small opportunity is wiped out under this glaring floodlight of panic, that person may miss out on safe, transparent, truly beneficial options. In that moment, intuition is being hijacked by anxiety. Mental health science shows that anxiety and depression can drive the brain's threat detection system into overdrive. The amygdala becomes as sensitive as a temple bell in a storm, ringing at the slightest flash. The anterior cingulate, instead of flexibly assessing, insists on finding fault in everything. The insula, instead of flagging important signals, magnifies every heartbeat, every stomach cramp as proof of looming danger. In that state, hunches take on a very negative, very certain tone, but lose their nuance. They become like a radio that only picks up one station, the alarm channel. Seeing this doesn't mean you are weak, overthinking, or broken. It only means this: you are human, and you've been through things that were not easy. Fear wants to protect you, but when it isn't held and soothed properly, it grabs the microphone and declares itself intuition. And if we don't notice, we hand it too much power. The power to decide whom to trust, whom to meet, what to try, which step to take forward, which door to shut. So how can we tell when a hunch is wisdom and when it is the echo of fear? There is no perfect formula, but there are a few gentle signs to help you check for yourself. First, look at intensity and absoluteness. Healthy intuition usually speaks in a low, steady voice, clear but not screaming. Be careful. Wait a bit. Look more closely. It gives you space to think. It doesn't insist. Do this right now or disaster. Fear disguised as intuition tends to sound extreme. This will definitely go wrong. Don't trust anyone. The world is dangerous. There will never be another chance. It corners you, forcing you to choose in panic. Next, see how it treats you and others. Mature intuition usually walks with respect. It protects your boundaries without condemning the whole world. It says, "This person isn't someone I should share my private life with," but it doesn't force you to believe everyone is bad. Fear in disguise, on the other hand, paints everything one color. No one is trustworthy. Anyone kind to me must have an agenda. Closeness always means getting hurt. If your so-called intuition makes you increasingly isolated, shut down, curled inward, it is very likely fear at the wheel. Another sign. How do you feel in the long run after following that hunch? If it is wisdom, then, with time, you tend to look back and think, "I'm glad I slowed down. I preserved respect on both sides. I'm safe, and I don't regret being too harsh." If it is fear's voice, often you later feel, "I wish I hadn't spoken so harshly. I wish I'd given them another chance. I wish I hadn't missed that." Don't use this to beat yourself up, but do use it to fine-tune. Each time you realize you mistakenly trusted fear, you're adding a new data point to your map. Next time, be more careful with that tone of voice. A very small, very fitting practice before sleep is this. When a strong hunch arises during the day, let it spend the night under gentle observation. Before you sleep, you can ask, "What wound in me did this hunch touch? Does it resemble some old story that hasn't healed?" If the answer is yes, acknowledge it. This is my fear speaking. Thank you for trying to protect me, but let me also invite my reason and compassion to sit down with us. The simple act of naming it correctly is already a significant step. Fear, when recognized, often softens. It no longer has to shout by pretending to be intuition. There are also times when learning to spot distorted hunches means daring to seek support. If you find yourself constantly having certain feelings that something terrible will happen, that you are worthless, that everyone is against you, that the future is only grey, that is no longer intuition, it is a sign of anxiety or depression that needs care. Talking to a doctor, a therapist, or a trusted person does not make you weaker. It helps you reassign roles among the voices in your mind. Which signals are symptoms needing treatment, and which are the voice of wisdom needing to be heard. At any age, you deserve that support, not only when you are young. There is something beautiful here. When you learn to distinguish fear-bent hunches from clear intuition, you not only protect yourself from wrong decisions, you also free others from unfair judgments. You give your children, grandchildren, friends, and those around you the chance to show up as who they are. Instead of being labeled by your old ghosts, you also give yourself the chance to experience new things, a new friendship, a new activity, a new joy that you might once have shut out just because you had a feeling. Tonight, as your body prepares to sink into sleep, offer your mind a small gift. Instead of rescanning every possible threat, try asking one very gentle question. Among the hunches I carry, is there any voice of old fear that I've mistakenly treated as truth? Am I willing, very slowly, to set it down a little? You don't have to change your whole life in one night. You only need to notice once. Not every hunch is reality. I have the right to double check. I have the right to treat myself and others more kindly than fear suggests. And then, with your breath slowing, you can imagine the clear hunches, the signals that truly protect your peace, your dignity, your kindness stepping closer to you, while those hunches stained by panic and harsh suspicion are, bit by bit, sent back to where they belong. Old chapters needing soothing, not maps for tomorrow, so that when you wake, if once more your heart sends a sense that something's there, you'll know how to ask further, listen more deeply, not letting the past steer the entire wheel of the future, but letting the past stand as a quiet teacher behind you, reminding, not imprisoning. In that gentle choice, you are rewriting your definition of the sixth sense. No longer an excuse for every fear, but a subtle meeting ground of experience, body, memory, reason, and compassion, and that is beautiful enough to carry with you into tonight's sleep. If we have just gently looked straight at hunches distorted by fear, there is another realm worth honoring: moral intuitions. Have you ever walked away from a conversation where no one openly insulted anyone, yet your heart quietly whispered, "Something here isn't right"? Dear friend, in the soft darkness of the room where you are lying, let's slowly open another inner door of the brain. Not only where images, sounds, and memories are processed, but where your sense of right and wrong, fairness and decency is processed too. People often talk about morality as rules, doctrines, codes. But before you can recall what you were taught is right, your brain already has very fast, almost instinctive reactions to injustice and falseness. A contemptuous glance, a belittling remark towards someone vulnerable, a complicit silence in the face of wrongdoing, a slick way of dodging responsibility. All of these can awaken in you a warm, uneasy stir. I don't like this. I don't trust this person. Neurologically, those moral feelings don't appear out of thin air. Regions like the orbitofrontal cortex, the medial prefrontal cortex, areas involved in empathy and reading others' emotions, together with networks that process pain, bonding, and trust, all take part. When you witness unfair behavior, your brain responds not only with thoughts, but with bodily feeling. Heart skipping, face heating, stomach sinking. That's because the brain regions handling social pain and injustice are linked with those handling physical pain. In other words, seeing something wrong can literally hurt. What makes moral intuition in older adults especially meaningful is that it is built on many layers of lived experience. Times you saw honest people lose and cheaters win. Times you yourself were belittled, abandoned, treated unjustly. Times you witnessed someone decent stand up for the weak. All those gains and losses of morality accumulate into a kind of inner value radar. When someone smiles at you but slanders the absent. When someone demands respect but cannot spare any for those who serve. When a promise is twisted with clever excuses, your moral intuition gently taps your shoulder. This isn't right. In real life, there have been small moments when you trusted this feeling without naming it. Someone proposes a business deal that looks legitimate on paper, but the way they speak about past clients reeks of exploitation, treating people as tools. You hear it and something in you grows cold, despite the attractive numbers. If you choose to walk away, you may later find you dodged a mess, not because you're too suspicious, but because your moral intuition sensed the lack of integrity before your reasoning gathered all the proof. Or in your family, perhaps you've met someone who often enters your home all friendly on the surface, yet frequently makes jokes that cut others down, mocking appearances, illness, difficult choices. No law is broken, no evidence of crime, but you don't feel at ease. That wrongness is very often moral intuition speaking. This smile doesn't come with respect. With age, your ability to pick up on such subtle misalignments often grows sharper if you don't let others silence you with, "Oh, older folks are just picky." Sadly, many people your age have been dismissed when they speak from moral intuition. You sense something shady in a deal. Warn your children and receive a shrug. Nowadays, you have to take risks. You're old-fashioned. You warn about someone you feel is untrustworthy, and here, you think like the old days. After a few times, many choose silence. They doubt their own hunch or tire of arguing. In that silence, not only a lifetime of experience is pushed aside, but a whole field of moral intuition that could protect family and community is neglected. Tonight, I want to tell you clearly and gently, your moral "this feels wrong" has value. It is not flawless, not absolute law, but it is a precious signal source. Many decision-making studies show that people quickly judge others' trustworthiness based on micro-expressions, how they speak about the absent, how they treat the vulnerable. The more experience, the more data the brain has. When you sense this person is not safe, even before finding exact words, it is very possible your moral brain is using your life experience to speak. However, like all forms of intuition, moral intuition can also be contaminated by old wounds and prejudice. If you were once harmed by someone from a certain group, it's easy to suspect everyone who resembles them. Same region, same profession, same manner of speaking. If you were scammed over money, you might see everyone who talks about social projects as manipulators. If you were hurt by someone with a certain religion, politics, or lifestyle, you might label the whole group bad. In such moments, your wrongness is no longer pure moral sense. It's tinged with painful memory. Your job as a mature person is to filter. Are you reacting to their present behavior, or to a label you stuck on a whole group long ago? A gentle way to check is to ask, what bothers me here? Has a core value been touched, or just my habits? Core values are things like honesty, respect, not exploiting the weak, keeping promises, taking responsibility. If what they do clearly violates these, your moral intuition is worth heeding. But if they are simply different from you in dress, speech, technology use, and they harm no one, this might be the moment to smile at yourself. I feel strange because I'm from another generation, not because they're bad. When you can distinguish like this, moral intuition becomes a beautiful tool. It protects without condemning blindly. It helps you step away from those willing to cheat, manipulate, or be cruel without dragging you into contempt for the entire world. It allows you to do something many young people sometimes forget. Stand on the side of what's right, even if only through a withheld nod, a quiet refusal, a soft reminder. Picture a simple scene. You're at a family meal. Someone starts making mean jokes about another person, their looks, their illness, a hard choice they had to make. People laugh, but inside, something in you falls silent. You're not amused. Your moral intuition nudges. This isn't kind. You don't need to cause a scene or give a speech, just change the subject. Or gently say, if they heard that, they'd be hurt. That small act, born from a wrongness, felt before logic, fully analyzes it, nurtures a different atmosphere, more humane. Or another situation. You see someone trying to pressure an elder into signing documents they don't understand, using slippery words. Maybe you once saw a loved one harmed by similar tactics. Now your moral radar lights up fast. Stop. You step in, ask more questions, suggest taking the papers home, or advise them not to sign in haste. This is where your old pain does not repeat as wound, but transforms into intuition that protects others. From 45 to 90, the role of moral intuition often isn't predicting the future, but quietly upholding a standard for your family and small community. You don't need to be a judge, but you can be the person your loved ones know. If grandma, grandpa feels uneasy about someone's attitude, maybe look again. If they sense someone is truly kind, maybe that person is worth trusting. To do this, all you need to nurture is honesty with yourself, distinguishing the voice of pride, resentment, stubbornness from the voice of values. Before sleep, if you'd like a small practice, recall a time you felt clearly something's wrong with this person or situation for moral reasons, and later time proved you right. Remember it not to gloat, but to affirm to yourself, I have an inner compass. Then recall a time you didn't like someone only because they were different style, accent, life choices, but later they turned out to be good. That memory is not for self-blame, but for a gentle adjustment. Next time, I'll listen more carefully to what they do, not only to whom they resemble in my memory. Between those two memories, your moral intuition will gradually calibrate, less driven by prejudice, more steady in defending decency. And perhaps the soft lesson to take into tonight's sleep is this. Not every off feeling means a villain in disguise, but not every don't overthink. Everyone's like that is right either. At your age, you have the right to trust more in your inner voice when it stands on the side of respect, honesty, compassion, even if others dismiss it. Let yourself drift into sleep, feeling grateful for that moral intuition. It is the fruit of years of witnessing, loving, hurting, and learning. Tomorrow, if you face a situation where you can't yet explain why, but your heart quietly says, this does not fit my values, give that voice a chance. Pause for a beat. Ask one more question. Choose the side that lets you look back at yourself with calm respect. In those quiet choices, you're letting intuition not only protect you, but also keep warm the fragile moral space of this world. And that is a very beautiful contribution, even if only you ever know. If moral intuition helps us keep a healthy distance from what's not right, there is another, much gentler kind of hunch, those moments of knowing ahead within your own family. Why is it that sometimes, before you see clearly, You already know a loved one is sad. Dear friend, let your mind return to those very ordinary, very small scenes that soften your heart whenever you recall them. A winter afternoon in the Midwest. The door opens. Your eldest child, now in their 40s, walks in. Coat neat, smile present. The "hi mom" sounds normal enough, and yet you, the mother who has lived beside this child for so many years, need only 1 second at the corner of their eyes, the slight drop in those 2 short words, to know something's wrong. No clear data, no charts, no lab results, just a hunch. And later that night, when the grandkids are asleep, your child sits down, sighs, and shares about work pressure, a loosening marriage. You are not surprised. Inside, you simply think, I knew it. Many call that mother's intuition, like magic. But underneath, neuroscience can explain it in a language still warm. Your brain is deeply familiar with every step, tone, and silence of that child. The tiniest deviation, and your fine-tuned recognition system lights up. Or imagine a late evening on the East Coast. The retired husband is in his armchair reading, the wife is in the kitchen. Their youngest, living in another state, calls via FaceTime. On the screen, all seems fine. The project is going well, he laughs, says he's going to the beach at the weekend. When the call ends, she turns to her husband. He's exhausted. Hes surprised. What did you see? She can't list reasons, just that his speech was a bit too fast. A couple of hesitations mentioning his boss. His eyes less bright than usual. The next day, she sends a message. If you need to talk, I'm here. A few days later, when he calls back and breaks down, she is quietly ready. Her intuition had already signaled. Stories like that are not rare. A wife needs only the sound of the garage door to know whether her husband is coming home heavy or light-hearted. A husband needs only to see his wife clearing the table more slowly to know her back hurts. Grandparents need only a "I'm fine" on the phone to know the grandchild is not. For years, we've used hunch to name this ability, pushing it into the vague. But if we look more closely through the gentle light of science, these moments don't lose their beauty. They become even more precious. They are mind and heart working together after many years of love and attention. The human brain has a remarkable capacity, recognizing patterns in the behavior and emotions of those we're bonded to. When you live with someone long enough, your brain quietly builds a baseline map of them. How they walk when happy, how they type keys when worried, how high their voice goes when excited, their breathing when tired, the quality of their silence when something is unsaid, face reading regions, sound processing regions, emotional memory networks all collaborate to create an invisible standard. This is them when they're okay. The present only has to deviate a bit from that map for your brain to notice, often before your conscious mind finds words. That's why a mother needs only a different kind of to know her child is sad. Why a partner needs only to hear heavier breathing on the phone to know tonight calls for care, not criticism. Steps, breaths, how a door closes, these are all data. We don't calculate, but the brain does. And when attachment runs deep, all that data is read through a particular light, the light of attentive love. Attentive love is when you don't just coexist with someone, but you look at them, listen to them, sense them, year after year. Not to pry, but to be present. It is that presence that makes family intuition more accurate and tender than any algorithm. No app on your phone can know that if your child walks 2 steps slower from the door to the kitchen, they need a hug, but you can. Empathy research adds another piece. Our brains have networks that activate when we see others sad, in pain, or tired, as if a softer version of their feeling is echoing inside us. When you look at the face of someone you love, part of your brain mirrors their emotion, helping you feel rather than just observe. After many shared years, this system becomes very refined. A tiny change in their eyes is enough to make your own chest pinch. You call it a hunch, but it is also resonance. Interestingly, family intuition rarely arrives as a harsh voice. It comes as a gentle suggestion, a sense that tonight you should sit a bit longer beside them, a thought that pops up I should call, an urge to pour tea, to rest your hand lightly on someone's shoulder. When we follow these small prompts without drama, without speeches, just with a bit more presence at the right time, the threads of trust quietly tighten. But, as with all forms of intuition, we need a touch of kind clarity here. Family intuition is at its best when used to empathize and protect, not to control, overinterpret, or impose. Sometimes, from a correct hunch, my child is sad, we slide into conclusions. They don't trust me. They're disappointing me. Then push, interrogate, pressure. The distance grows. Intuition gets pulled away from its root in attentive love and becomes the voice of a wounded ego. So the little lesson here is to use hunches as an open door, not handcuffs. When you sense that something is off with a loved one, let intuition lead you toward presence. You look a bit tired today. If you want to talk, I'm here. You seem to have a lot on your mind. If you need some quiet, I understand. Grandma notices. You're quieter than usual. If something's worrying you, don't carry it alone. These sentences give the other person a choice to open up or not yet, but they know there is a safe place to return to. Intuition becomes a gift, not a burden. For you, in the 45-90 age range, this is especially meaningful. You carry a kind of family intuition that only time can build. You remember your spouse's footsteps when you were young. You've seen the changes after surgeries, sleepless years, pandemics. You know that a grandchild who usually grumbles but today is silent is not suddenly well behaved, but possibly not okay. Your strength lies here. A single timely sentence from you can make a small heart feel less alone. And in return, don't underestimate the intuition your loved ones have for you. If your child always calls at the exact moment you're tired, if your partner suddenly brings tea when you haven't complained, if your grandchild clings to your leg a bit longer on a day you feel fragile, those are also loving brains at work. Allow yourself to trust and receive that care. When you say, I'm fine, don't worry, you may unintentionally dim that beautiful channel of connection. At a deeper level, those knowing ahead moments in family remind us that intuition is not just a clever brain, it is a persistent heart. You cannot have accurate intuition about someone you never truly pay attention to. But with those you love, long-term attention builds a kind of muscle memory in the soul. That is why elderly couples understand each other with a glance. Why a mother, hearing just hello, knows if her child is on the street or in the car, calm or tense. Before you slip into sleep tonight, you might like to spend a few moments remembering. Think of a time you knew ahead in your family, knew your child was sad, knew your grandchild needed a hug, knew your partner was overloaded. Recall what helped you see it, a look, a breath, a pause. Then think about how you responded. If you stayed a bit longer, asked gently, reached out your hand, give yourself a quiet thank you. you used your intuition well. If there were times you sensed something but couldn't act, or reacted harshly and widened the gap, don't punish yourself. Just treat it as data for next time. When I feel that, maybe next time, I'll sit down instead of snapping. Family intuition, like any skill, can be refined right up to the final years of life. As long as you allow yourself to notice, as long as you are willing to listen, you are nurturing your capacity for empathy. And perhaps the gentle question to carry into sleep tonight is this: tomorrow, if there is a small moment when I suddenly think, I think my loved one isn't okay, what will I do with that hunch? Ignore it, for fear of bothering them. Clamp down, for fear of losing them. Or take one small, very small step toward them, with a soft question, a cup of tea, a message so they know they are seen. In those very small choices, intuition is no longer a distant mystery, but a warm bridge between hearts. And you, with all the years you've lived, have more than anyone the bricks to build such bridges. Rest easy, knowing that simply by listening a bit more finely, loving a bit more deeply, you are already offering a gift of great worth to those you love. If those knowing ahead moments in the family are the gentle reward of years of paying attention, then tonight let's ask a straightforward question. Is intuition something that just comes and goes on its own? Or can we train it the way we train a quiet set of muscles in our mind? My dear friend, as you lie still in your bed, the lights dimmed, the sounds outside your window reduced to a few passing cars or a soft breeze, this is actually the most precious time of day to have a conversation with your sixth sense. Not with complicated rituals, not with mystical beliefs, but with 3 small habits. Light enough not to tire you, deep enough for the brain to recognize them as real signals that, repeated night after night, gradually consolidate into a skill. Just like muscles, the more rightly you use intuition, the steadier, more flexible, more reliable it becomes. The first habit is to review one hunch from the day. Just one. You don't need to dissect the entire day. Don't need to turn bedtime into a courtroom. Just pick a single moment. In the morning you felt I should call that friend. At noon you sensed I shouldn't reply to this email. While I'm angry, in the afternoon you briefly noticed the server looks sad. In the evening you felt, I don't feel comfortable with that remark. Right before sleep, close your eyes and bring that moment back, as if placing a small stone on your palm. Ask very gently, where did that hunch come from? What did I do with it? What was the outcome? If you heard the hunch, don't answer while you're heated and truly waited, and later saw the conversation unfold more calmly. Acknowledge it. Your brain distinguished well between impulse and warning. If you ignored the urge to call someone, and tonight you find out they had a bad day, also acknowledge it, not to blame yourself, but to say, next time, if this feeling returns, I'll try to follow it. If a hunch made you defensive, attacking, and it turns out it was just a misunderstanding, gently recognize, oh, so this is the kind of feeling tinted by old fear. I need to be careful with it. Just by spending a few seconds to review, your brain has already begun to categorize. Which types of signals lead to long-term peace, which lead to entanglement and regret. Scientifically, this is like feeding feedback data back into the brain's prediction system. Our brain is always learning by comparing what I thought would happen with what actually happened. When you consciously engage in this process, recalling one case each night, the neural connections for judgment, memory, and emotion are refined. Some pathways are strengthened, others toned down. Done regularly, your intuition becomes less noisy, less hijacked by anxiety, and more like a wise friend than a blaring loudspeaker. The second habit is to listen to your body for exactly 1 minute. No more, no less, as a way to honor the role of the insula, the brain region that reads internal signals we talked about. You can place a hand on your chest or belly, close your eyes, and breathe slowly. No need to meditate in a heavy sense, just a light check-in. How is my heart beating? Is my breath shallow or deep? Are my shoulders tensed or soft? Is my jaw clenched or released? Don't scold yourself if in that minute you suddenly realize you've been tightening your shoulders, holding your breath, suppressing all day. Realizing it is the first step. This tiny exercise, if repeated each night, quietly does 2 things. First, it sends a message to your nervous system. Night is the time to lower vigilance. The body no longer needs to use strong signals, pounding heart, rigid muscles, insomnia to sound the alarm. Second, it teaches you to differentiate between real warning sensations and those coming from fatigue, low blood sugar, too much coffee, too little movement. Tomorrow, when your heart speeds up a bit while talking to someone, you'll more easily recognize, this morning I drank a lot of coffee and slept little. It's not necessarily that this person is dangerous. Conversely, if there is no clear biological reason, and your body still tightens when someone approaches, that may be a signal worth observing more closely. It sounds simple, but at 45, 60, 80, this is a big gift. When the body starts speaking in many ways, blood pressure, joints, sleep, listening is not just about detecting illness, but also about not misreading every physiological noise as a bad omen. 1 minute each night helps you become more familiar with yourself, less prone to senseless panic, and from there, intuition rests on a clearer foundation. The third habit is to leave one gentle question for tomorrow. Not a to-do checklist, not a heavy plan, but a question like, tomorrow, whom will I dare to trust my warm feeling with? Tomorrow, if my hunch tells me to slow down, will I dare to slow down? Tomorrow, what would I like to be curious about rather than afraid of? You can write it on a note beside your bed, or simply repeat it in your mind, as long as it's kind, short, sincere. This question does something very interesting for the brain. It sets your sixth sense to open mode. Instead of waking and letting the new day drag you around in a chaotic flow, you give yourself a small direction. Learn to discern. Learn to listen. While you sleep, the brain keeps doing what it always does, sorting memories, strengthening connections, pruning excess. The question you place before sleep is like a marginal note on the page. Tomorrow, let's be a bit more subtle. You don't need to strain. Repetition will do the rest. In psychology, we know that the question we repeatedly carry into sleep quietly shapes how we pay attention during the day. If every night you drift off with, "The world is dangerous, anyone can hurt me," your brain will favor evidence that proves that true. If you fall asleep instead with "Tomorrow, can I combine intuition and calmness to choose what is kindest for me?" your brain's attention system will begin to look for moments when you can practice exactly that. Training the intuition muscle, in this sense, is not about forcing yourself to foresee more, but gently bending it toward a brighter, more humane direction, less ruled by the shadows of the past. Together, these 3 habits don't take more than a few minutes, but their meaning, especially at a stage of life where every decision can't be careless anymore, runs deep. Each reviewed hunch helps distinguish what is truly yours from what is just an old echo. Each minute of bodily listening keeps you from becoming a slave to physiological signals, while also not ignoring crucial warnings. Each gentle question for tomorrow helps you live more deliberately with the gift called experience, instead of letting experience harden into bitterness. And perhaps most importantly, these little rituals are not meant to turn you into someone who always reads people and never errs. That kind of perfection does not exist. The true goal is softer, to help you live in a more comfortable relationship with your inner voice. No more extremes, neither rejecting everything nor worshipping everything. Instead, listen, ask, verify, then choose what best aligns with your values, your health, your kindness. Imagine a few weeks from now, if you really keep up these small steps. One morning, someone offers you something tempting. Your intuition whispers, slow down. You remember the night practice. All right, I've received the signal. Now we'll look further. You ask a few more questions, request more time, consult another opinion, then decide whether you say yes or no. You move forward without feeling dragged by fear or pressure. Or in your family, you sense someone is sad. Instead of cornering them, you choose gentle presence. That's when you see clearly. The sixth sense is not a shrieking siren, but a calm companion. Before we end tonight, I'd like to leave you with a thought to carry into sleep. In our body there are muscles we never see, yet they hold us upright. Deep back muscles, core muscles, the muscles around the spine. Intuition is like that. It's not flashy like surface muscles. It lives deep in the layers of memory, attention, morality, love, if we're willing to strengthen it in the right way through listening, comparing, and treating ourselves kindly. It will help us stand steadier in the years ahead. Amid countless invitations, countless fears, countless choices. Tonight, you might try just one step. Pick one hunch from the day, reflect on it for a few seconds, then place your hand on your chest. Breathe slowly, and pose one small question for tomorrow. That's enough. No need to follow the protocol perfectly. Just do it with sincerity and tenderness toward yourself. The rest, let your intelligent brain and your heart, seasoned by so many years, continue their conversation in your sleep. And tomorrow, when you open your eyes, perhaps you'll find you trust your inner voice just a little more, and are gentler with it too. That alone is a very big step. So, over these past sections, we've gently touched one layer of intuition after another. Hidden memories, bodily signals, fear-distorted hunches, warm knowing ahead in the family, soft questions we carry into sleep. Now, perhaps it's time to place one bigger, yet gentler question. With all I've lived through, what do I want the rest of my life to be guided by? My dear friend, if you're listening to these words, chances are you've already walked a journey of more than half a century, maybe 6, 7, 8 decades. You're no longer the person at the starting line, eager to collect every experience without caring about fatigue. You've tasted enough sweetness and bitterness from trusting wrong, loving wrong, hoping wrong, choosing right, choosing wrong, surviving days you once thought you wouldn't. More importantly, you now hold something no clever young person can buy: a ripened intuition. We often talk about youth as life's gift, but rarely about the gift of later life. The ability to look at something and feel it deeply, not only with curiosity, but with seasoned understanding. At 45, 60, 80, intuition is no longer a fleeting impulsive emotion. It carries the echoes of thousands of days lived. Winter mornings driving on icy roads, afternoons in hospitals, sleepless nights worrying about your children, times signing documents, times of parting and of reunion. If, in the past, feelings were only waves, then now they are a current that has met many banks, knows what collision is, what an opening is, and the important question is no longer, is my intuition right or wrong, but now, what do I want to use it for? In the remaining part of life, what we need may not be to know everything in advance, but to choose more rightly for the precious time left. The farther we go, the clearer a simple, sharp truth becomes. Our energy, health, time, and attention are no longer endless springs. We cannot throw ourselves at every invitation, every argument, every game, every call we return, every trip we accept, every person we keep close is a choice. And it is precisely here that the sixth sense, once it's been cleaned a bit of fear and prejudice, can become a very precious gift of later life. Imagine one morning you wake up, no longer rushing like in your 40s or 50s. The world is still loud, social media still arguing, news still overflowing. But inside you, there is a larger quiet than before. In that quiet, there is a small, unhurried voice asking, "Today, what is truly worthy of me?" If you listen closely, you'll see that your intuition now doesn't lean toward noisy things. It cares less about quick victories, less about invitations that only stroke your ego. It leans more toward choices that keep you close to what matters. Calling an old friend, going for a checkup instead of ignoring a pain, apologizing to your children or grandchildren if you were harsh yesterday, deciding to loosen ties that weigh down your heart. Brain science shows that, as we age, some speed processing regions may slow, detailed memory may fade, but our capacity to integrate experience, see the big picture, notice long-term patterns tends to deepen. People call this mature wisdom, not knowing the most facts, but understanding what truly matters. Intuition at this stage, when rightly trusted, is an ally of that wisdom. It reminds you, last time you clung to something petty, how many days did you lose to resentment? Is it worth it this time? It asks, will you spend your strength keeping up appearances for people far away, or save it for those close who need a hug? It pulls you away from pointless quarrels, from invitations that, deep down, you already know are hollow. You don't need a complex philosophical system to do this. You only need to start noticing which intuitions make you more spacious, lighter, warmer, which make you shrink, bitter, rigid. The gift of later life doesn't lie in guessing news correctly or reading strangers flawlessly. It lies in using your inner voice to avoid wasting any more days. Not wasting strength on old grudges. Not wasting your heart on those who no longer wish to stay. Not wasting your mind on races that were never yours. Think of the people you've known who lived fully and departed with a calm gaze. At the end, they rarely talk about whom they beat or what they were better at. They speak of very different things. I wish I'd spent more time with family. I wish I'd let go sooner. I wish I'd listened to my body earlier. I wish I'd dared to love with less pride. If you listen closely, all those I wish are echoes of intuitions they once had but ignored. They had felt, I shouldn't push this argument to the end. I should see a doctor soon. I should hug that child. I should apologize. But pride busyness. Ego, fear, drove them otherwise. Your gift now, standing at a point where you can look back and ahead, is the chance to mend those I wish right in the present. So practically, how can intuition help us shape the rest of our days? It can nudge you about your body. This pain isn't like the usual little aches. I should get it checked. Not in panic, but in respect. After many years, the body is no longer a car that can run forever without maintenance. Health intuition, when heard with clear-headedness, not obsession, helps you preserve more years of quality, still able to walk, make your own coffee, hold your grandchild, watch the evening sky. Those are gifts not to be taken lightly. It can nudge you in relationships. Every time I see this person, I feel drained, heavy, doubting myself. Do I really need them this close in my life anymore? In later years, the right to choose who is near you is sacred. You don't have to cut them off brutally, but you can take a step back, keep some distance, reduce meetings that your intuition has repeatedly, quietly flagged as not good for me. That is not selfishness. That is protecting your remaining days from being eroded by energies you know too well. It can nudge you about family. This child always carries things alone and never complains. My hunch tells me I should ask more gently. My partner says I'm fine, but something is different today. This grandchild needs praise, not only correction. When you hear and respond with small actions, intuition becomes a live connection between generations. You use all your lived years to offer safety to those who will live on after you. It can guide you in very ordinary choices. At this stage, do I want to learn something new or cling to my old anger? This day off, will I spend it glued to bad news or step outside for air, to look at trees? This savings, do I want to clutch it in worry or use a small part to do something kind so my heart can rest easier? There's no universal answer, but if intuition is the voice of everything you've lived, it likely won't urge you to repeat loops you already know don't lead to peace. Here we return to the image we've been building all along, the sixth sense as a companion. In youth, that companion talks loudly, easily confused with passing moods. In midlife, it's wiser but crowded out by pressure and obligations. Now, if you allow, that companion can sit beside you each night, in silence, simply to remind you, no one knows how many days are left. But today, you still get to choose. You don't need to predict what the next 10 or 20 years will bring to the world. What you can do very practically, very humbly, is ask, in the rest of my life, will I let my intuition lead me closer to kindness or closer to bitterness? Kindness here doesn't mean blind self-sacrifice, but a way of living that doesn't betray what you deeply know is right. Caring for your body, keeping an honest heart, treating the deserving well, daring to put down resentments that no longer serve anyone, not even you. And then, as your breath slows, you can let the final question sink like a stone into a lake, rippling and then blending into the water. If intuition truly is the voice of everything I have lived, of my stumbles and risings, my loves and losses, my silent nights of tears and my mornings of moving on, where do I want that voice to lead me in the next 10-20 years? Do I want it to push me deeper into fear, suspicion, rigidity, or to gently guide me, step by step, toward kinder choices for myself, for my family, for the very ordinary decisions of tomorrow? You don't need to answer out loud. It's enough that your heart knows. And tonight, as you close your eyes, consider that you've just laid a hand on your own shoulder and softly said, "From here on, I will listen more carefully to this ripened voice and use it to live gentler, clearer, lighter, then let sleep slowly come, carrying the peace of someone who knows that the final gift of life is not somewhere far away, but right here, in how you choose to listen to yourself, starting tonight. You can close your eyes now and let your thoughts fade away like mist. If your mind still wants to wander, let it continue its journey to the next video, where we will go deeper into the mysteries of the soul. And if your body is tired, then simply let this sound lull you into sleep. No need to try, just breathe and remember everything you are searching for is already resting quietly within yourself.